Hello, welcome everybody. It is Friday, so it's time for Friday with Fran.
Mhm.
I'm Shelley Kino, your host, and Fran and I today are going to talk about transition. We get together weekly for anybody who is coming across us for the first time on this video, and we just talk about things regarding special education. Both Fran and I have over 2 decades of experience. Hers is much more personal than mine. She has raised two children who both have different learning abilities, and I have been a special educator um, as a teacher's aide, as a substitute, as a full time special education teacher. And so we just started chatting back the beginning of summer, I guess, of 2020, and had some people say, you guys are really good together. We think you should do this on a more regular basis. So we started Fridays with Fran, and here we are. I think this is our 13th episode, which I believe is M for Fran. So I'm not sure of my letters of the alphabet, but for some reason I think M is right in the middle. So thank you for anyone who has joined us on a regular basis and who has given us input over the weeks. We very much appreciate you. Something that I realized last week that I forget to mention is if anyone is interested in having a virtual or an in-person IEP checklist, you can visit my website and I'll put the link here
Mm.
in the chat in just a minute. And you can certainly grab one of those things or both of them. Right now, we're having meetings both ways all across the country. So if that is something that you would find helpful in your situation, absolutely jump over there. Fran, what are we going to talk about today? Tell us that
W-
while I type in my website address here.
We are going to talk about transitions.
And when you say
And
transitions,
oh,
what do you mean? Hi, Alex. Alex says hi from New York.
oh, awesome. Hi, Alex. We are going to talk transitions. You know that thing that happens from like what we just did? You were talking, and now I'm talking. And
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in between, there was a transition.
Yep.
And in the beginning, our transitions kind of were like a fumbling football sometimes. Uh, but now we're because of practice we're doing much better with transitions and much the same way transitions in life. How do we transition from uh, being in a bed to having to be somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
like school? How do we transition from going to church or yeah, from being at church where you're supposed to be relatively quiet, so you're not distracting everybody, to going to a sibling soccer game or a gym where there's whistles and cheerleading. How do you transition a holiday when you're going to visit relatives you've never seen? And there's a lot of things you can't break. How do you prepare for this? How do you do it? And how can you be successful in the process? And so that's kind of in a little bit of a nutshell what we're hoping to cover today.
Yes. So it sounds like a lot. So we're going to get right to it today. So when it comes to anybody transitioning, it's always good to have a plan, whether that's a plan in your head or a plan you've written down. And it's also good to think about your expectations for how that transition will go and what you want to happen once the transition is completed and you're at the next phase. So some of the things that I like to do ahead of time is, the night before, I'll think about, okay, what's the weather tomorrow? What are the things that I'm going to be doing tomorrow? And I kind of
Mm-hmm.
start thinking about when I get out of bed tomorrow, I'm going to need to dress like this. Of course, a day like today is a nightmare because I've already changed clothes 3 times. Um, we are
I
in
have a
Southern.
tank top underneath because that's what I had. I had a t-shirt, then I put a tank top. Now I've got them both on because I gave up.
Yeah. Yeah. We here in Southern Illinois have gone from yesterday a high of 85 or 86.
We hit a
And
record apparently.
oh, did we? Okay.
Yeah.
I knew we were supposed to be close. And now today we hit our high earlier, much earlier, and now our temperatures are dropping. And so by so we started off in like summertime, and by the time the day ends, it'll be winter. So we're going to go summer, fall, winter really fast, all in one day. And it does make it very difficult to figure out what you're going to wear and what you have to do. But that's a transition, figuring that sort of stuff out. And then in my head, mentally preparing that, I might have different outfits that I'm going to wear, or like I also had to figure out things that I wanted to get done today. I have guests coming tonight, and then they're all going to leave me tomorrow, but they're going to take my van. So I had to check weather and be like, okay, the weather's going to be yuckier in the afternoon. So I've got to get the van straightened up so that people can get into it, because I usually drive it around by myself. So there's all kinds of stuff in it. So figuring out that transition of how do I get everything in, and, kind of planning out the day. And then when I woke up this morning, it was a reminder, okay, you've got this, this, and this to do. Get up and start doing it. So that's just for me how it works. How do you sort of get your transitions thought about?
I know personally, much like you, I try to figure out, I look at my calendar and I'm like, okay, well, I have this, this, and this happening. So do I need changes of clothes? Do I, and for me, the funny thing is it's become, okay, do I need my manual wheelchair? Do I need my power wheelchair? Am I going to need my walker? Do I need my roller walker that has all the wheels on it? That's like an additional transition that I have to do. And ever since I've had those series of concussions, I have to also be aware of, I still have sound sensitivity occasionally. And, well, am I going to need my earplugs? Should I pack my earplugs? Am I going to need it? So for me, it's kind of personally, it's evolved into from transitioning with my kids. I still have to do that with my daughter. But so some of my personal things is more my medical equipment. And I know parents that have children that have multiple medical needs. I know, they have to think of, okay, well, do I have those changes of clothes? Do I have the medication necessary? Do I have their feed? If they're tube fed, do I have the pump? Do I have an extra syringe? Things that a lot of parents don't have to think about.
Right.
Because it's not as simple as, oh, the kids are hungry. Well, let's run through the drive-through and we'll be good. No, you just can't run through the drive-through to tube feed somebody. So those are some extra things. And I'm going to tie that kind of into, like, I realize if I don't plan a transition well, or if I'm not prepared, and then I'm trying also to get other people out of the house, oh my goodness gracious, it's a mess. Nobody handles it. We all end up yelling, screaming. It's not pretty. So I'm learning that just because I'm not prepared is not fair to other people. So I have to prepare the transition, because so that we're all at peace.
Right. And in those kinds of situations, when you have big events like that, like even, like I said, these guests coming in tonight, and then my husband, they're taking my van tomorrow. So, they have to have, like, okay, well, what happens if the van breaks down? What happens, if where we need to get gas? What happens if, those are the things that they have to think about. And oftentimes I feel people don't plan for transitions. They just, oh, well, we'll just go with it, and whatever happens, happens. But those are transitions, and you do need to have an idea of what's going to happen, just in case, that because the way you plan for something to go may not be how it goes. They have a plan if they want to start off at a certain time tomorrow morning. Well, if that doesn't happen, then, what other things, how are they going to, a lot of transition, in my opinion, is a lot of mental adjustment. Like
flexibility.
Okay, balance. I'm going to say it before Alex gets in there. and
Oh,
understanding.
transitions can take time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
true.
so
Okay, back to what you
having
were saying. Yeah.
having a backup plan. As a teacher, I used to have to, I'd have my lesson plans, but then I'd also have a plan B. And in my head, I'd have a plan C and maybe even a plan D, because
Mm-hmm.
not that most of the time I ever had to use that, but it was there so that if there was an unexpected transition, I was sort of prepared ahead of time. You can't prepare for everything. You don't know everything that's going to happen, but you if you can be okay with changes that you didn't expect,
Mm-hmm.
transitions do become a little easier. I think that's been my experience, at least. So let's talk about specific transitions.
Okay.
Um, so we're getting ready to go into the weekend. In fact, some schools around here, they started their weekend yesterday because they're doing parent conferences, and the teachers were doing conferences today. So the kids aren't in school. So what sort of things did you do or would you recommend in that situation?
To transition to being home, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Mm, well, it depends. What did I do for my daughter even? Well, we kind of took it as a let's take it as a reboot day. And so I didn't really plan a lot of things for her to do today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking it as a so the only I tried to say, okay, this is what needs to be accomplished, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would kind of like it accomplished by this time.
Right.
That's my only expectation. Anything above that, if I ask, I would like you to do it, but I understand. So for this transition, we talked about it. We said, okay, well, you're going to have to be up by this time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and that's way longer than normal. And I think it's reasonable. And do you think it's reasonable? We communicated. That was one of the biggest things with transitions is communication, I believe.
Yeah. And that's easier at this stage in Allie's life than it was when she was younger, because now she's an adult. Prior, to, I mean, during the time that
Hmm.
she was going through elementary and middle school.
And she did not handle those well then. I
Right.
actually, we could go that direction or we can not go that direction. Do you want to go that direction?
Sure. It's a
Okay.
transition. So,
All right. Because one of the things I had wanted to touch on today was my personal experiences with my children who happen to have different needs and
mm-hmm.
how each of them needed transitions in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even and it's a fluid thing. It's not this. It wasn't the same throughout as they grew up. Like I was just saying with Allison in the beginning when she was in pre-K, I had printed up good old print shop um, a book that had. And it was before I knew about picture schedules and things like that, or social
Mm-hmm.
stories. It was just something I did because I was like, okay, well, there's got to be a way to help her get from this point to that point.
Yep.
And somehow we have to make it it's consistent because I was living with my parents. So I might not always be the one getting her up. So I was hoping by having this book, we would all be on the same page. And that is one of the things that I had written is that it has to be a consistent thing, consistent with whomever is doing the transitions. And there has to be open communication.
Mm-hmm.
Today is brought to you by the letter C, by the way. Just I'm going to give you that heads up now. So, so we in her book and we broke it down into really basics. Like a lot of people might just say, get dressed. No,
Mm-hmm.
we put it into the basics of every layer that you needed to put on. And
Mm-hmm.
so the book actually had to change when there other layers had to be put on because there was a lot of rigidity. So you had to have everything in there or the potential of everything in there.
Right. Yeah.
So
And
so
when you
for
say it
her,
was a
that's what
sorry, when you say it was a book, was it like in a 3-ring binder? Was it just
It was actually, I had taken, I'm trying to remember what size, regular letter size paper, and folded it in half. And it was
okay.
a flip. It was like a flip book.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think that's what I chose to use because,
Mhm.
like I said, it was good old print shop back in the day.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but it really did help because it helped with all of us being on the same page more than anything. And so that helped her, that she wasn't being thrown a curveball every time someone else was getting her up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that was one of the best things that happened with her.
That sounds like an amazing type of option. And
Eh,
you touched on picture schedules.
yeah.
Picture schedules or visual schedules are another great way to help kids and adults, honestly, with transitions.
Hmm.
Because when people know what's coming next, that tends to calm the brain because they know what to expect.
Right.
And a lot of our kiddos and adults with special needs need a consistent structure. And I know there's the
Yeah.
letter C. And they need that repetition of, okay, this happens after this, and then this happens after that. And so if you could
Hmm.
put that into, and for anyone who doesn't understand what we're talking about when we're saying this, um, if your person is able to read, it's as easy as typing up, breakfast and then kind of a time frame. But if they aren't able to read, then you could put a picture of a bowl of cereal or eggs or, kind of whatever your person would recognize as breakfast. Um, and then, what do you do after breakfast? Do you get dressed after breakfast? If that's the next thing, then, you either type that out in words or you get some sort of a picture. But then, as Fran said, sometimes you have to be very specific within those steps. So she already mentioned getting dressed. So for breakfast, it could be, you have to leave your room and come to the kitchen. You have to get a bowl out. You have to get a spoon. You have to get the cereal. You have to get the milk. You have to pour the cereal in, or some people like to pour the milk in first and then the cereal, whatever is the preferred way to do it. Um,
Hmm.
and those sorts of things could be on that visual schedule.
I'm trying to pull one up, is what I'm doing right
I figured I was going to try it, and I was like, it will take me too long to find it and talk at the same time. I'll get all confused. So, because I
now.
do have
Hmm.
some, actually, I don't know if they're on
Right.
this device that I could access them. Um,
Okay. I'm gonna have
but
to.
so those are what we're talking about when we're talking about visual schedules. Those help with transitioning from, okay, this is a school day schedule, to this is a, can I go ahead and share it?
Hmm.
To a, this is the weekend schedule. So you might, so like for this one, you go to the bathroom first, then you make your bed, then you have breakfast, you brush your teeth, you get dressed, you brush your hair, and then you would have something like that to continue on throughout the day. A transition from the weekends to, I'm sorry, from school to the weekend is, normally you get up, you do probably all of those things, and then you go to school, and then school has a schedule. But on the weekends, maybe is that a different one?
No, I'm
Oh,
not there yet.
okay.
It's opening.
Okay, because I saw something and then it was gone. And so having, okay, on the weekends you get to sleep a little bit later, and maybe you don't get dressed before breakfast. Maybe you hang out in your pajamas, until after breakfast. And so as long as you have that schedule, that will help with that transition, of, okay, now it's Friday evening or it's after school. What do we do after school? And is that different on a day where you don't have school the next day? So those are the types
Hmm.
that we are referring to and that we are saying would be helpful in just a transition from one day to the next. So this one's got different things to do in the AM, and then kind of in reverse for the PM. So obviously it was fairly easy for Fran to find those. So If you just Googled visuals, what did you Google to get
Picture schedule. That's the
picture
word I
schedule?
put in. Picture schedule.
So yeah, I mean they're really easy to find if it's something that you feel like you would want to personalize more. I'm very familiar with them and would be happy to help you. So you could certainly reach out to me and I could help you do something like that. So Fran, what else? What other kinds of things would you do? So let's say, so we've covered
Can we
weekend
go
or
to Can we go to Bubby, or do
sure.
you want to keep
Nope.
going with?
No, you're
Well,
good because
no. I
that's
mean,
every person is different on how they're going to need that transition
or we
help.
can, or we can finish. Yeah. Okay. So I think I'll go with kind of what has changed with Allison first.
Okay.
She now I don't have to be as detailed, but if I know it's going to be a big thing, I have to prepare a long time ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? And
Yeah. Yeah.
give as many uh, cues and the reasoning and and also the expectations. A lot of times I forget that kind of thing, what my expectation is, and so then I have this preconceived idea in my head, and it doesn't happen, and then I realize, well, I never communicated, another C word,
Right.
communicated what was important and why it was necessary and why it was necessary for her to be there and to
Right.
be participating.
Yeah.
So
And that's huge too. The giving them advanced warning when the transition isn't like regular schedules. So if you're going to throw in a vacation, or if you know that you're going to have to move houses or move cities, um, if somebody is going to have surgery, any of those sort of bigger life events, that if you get the warning ahead of time, um, and
I'm
how you
smiling because
time
it doesn't, yeah, it's the timing.
right, how you time it out for your person will depend upon your person. Some people might need a or 1 week. Other people might need B or C number of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that'll be a trial and error, especially in the early stages, but you'll figure it out, as to, oh, can I just give this person an hour's notice or do they need a whole day? So knowing that
I'm
time,
so hard right now.
why?
I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm thinking you're talking about this transition and how long it takes. I apologize. Someone's up. So
Oh, that's
what?
okay. Cooper's letting us all know, and my Jonas is in my background going, what's going on? I hear a dog barking. What do I need to do?
So what I'm laughing is, for as long ahead as I had to give Allison, I could not give to Luke. And that's why I'm laughing, because you're talking about length and I'm thinking, oh, the poor people, because Luke lives in a group home. So, and his staff don't always think things through or realize they don't know him. So when they go and tell him, hey, da 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 da, and then he'll talk about it forever. So he does not need that long of a transition time. You do not want to let him know that he has a doctor's appointment and a whole calendar. No, never tell him that. Just tell
Right.
him that, like that night, say, okay, Bubby, you're going to bed. In the
Mm-hmm.
morning, you have a doctor's appointment. That's all he needs.
Right.
You tell him ahead of time, that's not my fault. I've told you. No, tell him, because he'll ask you. But the thing we've done to combat that, once that happens, is, and I started it at my house, is we put a calendar up and we mark it, whatever the event is.
Mm-hmm.
And he can't always count per se everything, but he counts his way, which is fine. I mean, I get that now for sure. But he'll say, when is doctor? We'll go with that example. When is doctor? I don't know. Go count on your calendar, and he'll go to his calendar. he'll look for the mark and then he'll count it. And then when that night prior to bed, he marks that the day we were on off. And so that is how we handle the transition with him. Especially when someone slips up, whether it's myself or someone around him slips up, you have to, otherwise, but he'll still ask you. So another thing we've done with him is, okay, I'm going to tell you, and then I'm not going to tell you anymore. And so I'll say, okay, the doctor appointment is here. And then, so the following time when he goes, when doctor, I say, well, what did I tell you? When is it? And he gets aggravated because you answer that all the time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so it's just.
Yeah, different time frame.
Yeah. So that was why I'm laughing, because I'm sitting there thinking, oh my goodness gracious, Luke does not need that long of a transition. He just doesn't. It's not a necessary thing for him.
Right. And I want to encourage anyone who is watching who has a child in special education in the public school systems right now, that you can have this written into your child's IEP, that they need or they don't need X number of days or minutes or hours to prepare them for a transition or a change. And then you can also have written, and I've had this happen quite a few times in the last year, where I've said, okay, so we have a student that we have all agreed here at the IEP table has a problem with transitions. And if things don't go the same way, and there's no advanced notice that we have agreed to give the student, when that doesn't happen and the student shows behaviors that are unwanted behaviors, then who gets in trouble? Who's responsible? And I guarantee you, every school district thinks they're not going to do that, but we are all human, and we all fall into the, trap of, oh my gosh, we've got this transition, and oh, this kid is acting up, and I don't know why this kid is acting up, and they need to be disciplined, and they need to be corrected, and da 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 da. And I've seen kids get detentions, and then the parents have gone back and said, but wait a minute, nobody told my child, and it says right here in the IEP that they were supposed to be notified, whatever the amount of time was. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes, things, assemblies just happen that you as a teacher don't know about, and you just, all of a sudden you're being called down, and that will throw a kid off sometimes. But that's, if the kid is misbehaving, then the kid should not be getting in trouble or getting any kind of a detention or anything like that. So we've been able to have some detentions removed because it's a part of the child. So, so I just wanted to encourage, when I taught, I never thought about putting that into an IEP for a student. It's only now that I'm in the role that I am, where I can think differently about these things, and we can recognize these things, and we can hold people, we can hold adults accountable instead of always holding the kids accountable when it really shouldn't have been on their shoulders to begin with.
And I believe it's actually written into Allison's IEP, some of her transition help.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing.
Right, definitely. I really like what Alex wrote down there.
That one, or the one?
That one. Beware that transitions take different time frames for different people. That is so true. I mean, I know, or even I'm finding for myself personally, some days my transitioning, like physically, if I'm unable to physically do some things, it takes forever, and I get aggravated with myself even for how long it takes to get to transition from activity to activity. And because then I feel like other people are going to be impatient with me, so then I get more frustrated because I'm not moving fast enough, and it's just like this really bad slippery slope, and I can't. It's really been an eye opener for me as I think about how to help my daughter, because transitions are very difficult for her. And it's just it's been a blessing in disguise, I would say.
Yeah, it is very interesting, the things that we don't realize until we're put into the position to have to do them. So I don't want to move on unless you're ready.
You're okay. Okay. I was going to go back to the daily schedule.
Okay.
I just had a couple of pointers for that. I was just thinking of, is that okay to move on to?
Yep.
Is that where you're going?
It's all about transition. So we can transition forward or we can transition backward.
I think we're going to transition backward because we kind of actually missed that whole beginning point. We kind of jumped to the middle.
Yeah.
Ish.
Okay.
But that's okay. So could you share that up there, please? Do you mind? I kind of typed something to try to stay on track so that we could transition smoothly. But the thing, you can unshare now. The thing I was just thinking about mainly, I was looking at the daily one. A couple of the points I really wanted to touch on: the consistency. I told you about to do by the letter C, at home and school. That it has, and we've talked on that previously when we met about about what you were implementing at school, implementing at home. And it's hard both directions. It's hard. I get it. For something that works at home to say, teachers, please do this. And the same way. So
yeah, I'm going to stop you there for a second, because having been a teacher and having had parents tell me that in the past, I would try it sometimes. And sometimes, to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't try it because the environment at home is so very different than the environment at school, that a lot of things don't work in both places in the exact same way.
Right.
They might work, but they might have to be tweaked to fit that particular environment.
So that was that we just all have to be on the same page.
Yeah.
And another thing and this is something kind of relatively new that I've really been focusing on: patience. Patience. You need patience to establish a transition routine, and you also need patience for the curveballs that happen in daily life.
I'll give you a C for that. We'll go with caring.
I actually have that further down. Yeah.
It is patience, but we're being brought to you today by the letter C.
Right. Yeah.
Trying to think of a C word.
I think it was there, but yeah.
Understanding that what I need isn't necessarily what someone else needs.
And the other part was the understanding, was seeing it from the eyes of the person you're asking to learn this transition. Taking the time to say, hey, how does this really, or asking them, how is this working? Is this schedule, is this transitioning working? Does it make sense? Or is it something so difficult that it's overwhelming? If the whole transition process is so overwhelming, how can we expect them to even start grasping it?
Right, exactly.
So that's the communication part of it as well. So I just really wanted to touch on those things. And I thought maybe we ought to touch on a little bit. I wrote it as seasonal transitions.
Yeah.
Because this is like major holiday season coming up.
Right.
And on top of it, major holiday season with the twist of COVID.
Right. Right.
So I mean, how are people going to do these transitions? Traditional things that have worked, that your child could do, now are going to have to be different. Everything is going to be different in some form or fashion these seasons. So how can you prepare your child now? How can you start thinking about what are their triggers? What are their sensory challenges with the holidays? And how can you start preparing those around your child for this transition? I didn't say how can you start preparing your child. How can you start preparing those around your child?
Yes. And I'm glad that you reiterated it, because I was going to do that. Because so often we prepare the child for the situation, but never the situation for the child.
Mhm.
And so it's important that the child or the person, doesn't have to be a child, it can be an adult, that everyone else changes some of what they might be doing as well, instead of trying to get this one individual to change to fit everybody around. So if each person makes a little bit of an adjustment, it can be better for everybody.
And here's the C word for you: compromise.
Yes.
Everybody has to compromise a little bit
Mm-hmm.
to make everything coordinate and to work together.
Right. Yep. So let's see. I'm gonna type some words over here in the chat. No, that's not a C word, Alex. She said balance again. We have caring, we have compromise, we have consistency.
Wait till I get to the final point. I got a bunch.
Oh no. What else did we say? Caring, compromise,
Consistency,
communication.
That's all. Curveball.
Curveball. Yep, you said that one earlier.
Challenges.
That's one of those C's that doesn't sound like a C.
Mhm. So okay, we've talked about the seasonal. So what are some what do you, I'd like you to just real quick popcorn off some of the things you can think of that people can do to help their child with it in school and then also at home.
Well, the C's that we've talked about, communicate, and first you have to know your person. Are they more like your daughter, where they need a long period of time, or are they more like your son, where a small amount of time is all they're going to need? So talking about those kinds of things ahead of time, at the ahead of whatever that time frame is appropriate. Drawing it out on a calendar. Oh, that was another one that we had calendar. Having, I just had another thing, and when I said calendar, it made me think of the C, and now I've forgotten what it was. But letting them know that these things are coming. Coming, yes.
Calendar.
Yeah, working with the school and discussing with the school, what are you going to say? What am I going to say? How do we make sure that, again, being on the same page? I'm trying to think of some other things that we would do. Social stories are really good for transition times, and even unexpected transitions. I remember doing social stories for having
Could you define a social story, please?
Sure. A social story is a story that it talks about a social situation, like having a substitute, getting on the bus, going to school and having to wear a mask, having a break from school. And it's very personalized and individualized for the person. I used to write them myself. Once you get the hang of it, they're not too difficult to write, but there are templates and things out there that you can use. And it's just a matter of the repetition of reading that and getting the person's brain to understand that change will happen or things will happen, and preparing them before they're in the situation, how to handle the situation. And it's usually very simple, very direct. You don't go into feelings. You don't go into, a lot of in-depth sorts of things. And then you go over that social story once a day, twice a day, depending on how big the situation is, or how much of a concern it is for the individual. And so, yeah, like I said, social stories for having a substitute. So you just Googled social stories, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't click on anything specific. I just wanted you to see right. How many.
Yeah. And I had actually written one that I was giving for free when the COVID stuff started on why we're not in school, because kids didn't understand why we were in school one day and now suddenly we're not. And so those were very helpful for my kiddos that needed transition help, because that again, it prepares them before they're in the event, so their brain has options of what to do. Because if they don't have options, that's when the
They have
behaviors.
nothing from which to draw
Right.
resources.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure there's a million. I'm not good at popcorn. You have to warn me.
You need that transition help.
I do. I need that. I need to know it's coming.
And
I,
I
I'm
purpose to do it to you this way.
I am horrible at trivia for this exact reason, because I hate being put on the spot and having to think of something right away.
So, yeah, I was just, and I'm gonna go with, I'm gonna think on the holiday as in not in the school setting,
Hmm.
in the transitions. I'll touch on that a little bit and give your brain a break.
Okay, thank you.
I think some of the biggest things I found we discovered over time is letting go of our expectations and realizing that we have to be flexible, and what may have been a family tradition may be a family expectation, may be a parental expectation of you, so therefore you've put that then on your children, may not be possible to
Hmm.
do in the moment that it's being asked of.
Hmm.
Yes, we expect our children to do. We expect our children to have to. They need to learn to compromise. They need to learn to give. They need to be able to be flexible. But as someone always says, there needs to be some balance as well. And realizing we're always asking the child to accommodate, to compromise, when we ourselves can be very rigid.
Hmm.
So I I know that in the beginning, opening gifts, we have a tradition that my sister and I would each get a gift at a time, and we would open it.
Hmm.
And you didn't go on until you both opened the gift. Sometimes they were coordinating, but they matched, so you ended up with the same amount of gifts.
Right.
Well, that was the same tradition that was tried with my children. In the beginning, Luke didn't open gifts. He just wasn't interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
And Allison just opened them quickly. So there's this dichotomy of someone not opening any gift and someone flying through the gift. The push me pull you is we have a bunch of gifts, and so there's a piling up, because eventually she's getting frustrated because she sees gifts and can't have them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He doesn't get what's going on, and he's being told to do something, and he's getting frustrated. So now uh, we know that, okay, we'll start it that way, and if he doesn't, or she doesn't, or whomever, we start out handing them, but then eventually we just stack them, and when you're ready, you open them.
Yep.
But you are expected to have uh, appreciation, thank yous. You're expected to have your manners. Even if you didn't participate when everyone else was, you still are expected to still do, you're still expected to have gratitude for your
Mm-hmm.
things. It's not a matter of, oh, I got my way, so now I don't have to do the rest of it. But
Right.
it's a matter of, that's where the compromise is, and realizing also it for everyone else's benefit. Why are we going to push someone to the point of blowing?
Mm-hmm.
No one benefits then.
Right.
So we had to learn. It was a process, and it's a continual
Mm-hmm. Another
process.
thing.
So
Yeah.
anyway, so that's kind of where I was thinking about the seasonal. It's just realizing that we do have family traditions, we have family expectations, and a lot of times they're expectations that have been passed down and passed down. So therefore it makes it a tradition.
Right.
Sorry, my house is apparently really loud today. I apologize.
Okay. It's part of life.
So,
We can transition through it. It'll be fine.
okay. Yeah, I probably should have put an earplug in. We have parent teacher conferences in our district, so kids are home.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
that's happening in a lot of districts. And that's such a good point that you bring up about knowing yourself and knowing what is and why it is important to do things a certain way. Um, you know, one of the things that I teach on is cognitive bias, and everybody has them. They're not all necessarily wrong or right. Determining how you come up with that will help you determine if you should continue with that thinking or not. So, yeah, why do we have to, why does everybody open the gifts all at once? Why do we take one at a time and open the gifts? Why do we have
mhm.
gifts? Why do we not? I mean, whatever the thing is when it comes to Christmas, or trick or treating or not trick or treating, going house to house or doing a trunk or treat or doing it at your church. Um, you know,
Making the child say trick or treat
right.
to get.
I mean, there are a lot of um, what's the word I want? Different ways, and I can't think of the words, but I mean, because everybody is different and everybody has their own personality and their own things that work for them.
Mhm.
Understand that it is really doing a disservice to a child if you make them do things that they are very uncomfortable with, because what you are teaching them then is, even if it's uncomfortable, if an adult or some person that is an authority over you tells you to do it, you should still do it. And that can lead down a very, very dangerous path of people being abused, in today's society, being abducted. And I know that we just went to a very dark place, but this is why I don't force kids to just blindly obey everything as a teacher that I ever taught them or wanted them, a certain way to behave. Because when we think, oh, well, they're being very disrespectful because they're not doing what I've told them to do, and therefore I'm getting frustrated, and they should just do it because I'm the parent or I'm the teacher or I'm the youth director or whatever the authority role is. You have to be very, very careful with what you really are asking. You got to think about what could this lead to down the road. So yeah, being able to say, okay, maybe we don't all have to open our presents one at a time or all at the same time or whatever it is. um, and understanding, and Alex says, transitioning with age or abilities of the person at the time. Again, it's that understanding, it's that caring of what is appropriate for this person now. um, and how can we compromise to get everyone comfortable with what is happening. um,
How
because
do we coordinate it all?
Yeah, and coordinated all. So I think it's very important. We only have about 10 minutes left. So I want to make sure that we just talk about, I think the principles that we've talked about are valid, whether someone is transitioning from, a school to a weekend back to school, a long holiday break, um, either going into or coming out of. There's so many tips about schedules and bedtimes and routines and all of that sort of stuff, but I want to, because you've had the experience, talk about transitioning out of high school or out of going to school every day, and then what that was like, because I know Allie is still in school and Luke is not. And we've talked in the past that for Allie it's appropriate, for Luke it was not. So how did that sort of all happen? Who helped you? How did you figure this stuff out?
Well, it was a whirlwind, um, because we had to wait for him to receive services. He was actually on our state list to receive services since he was a toddler and had never, and it was a lottery system,
Mm-hmm.
but within a certain different abilities. And so his name actually was never drawn, but he was emergency placed once I could no longer care for him. So that transition required, there was a service coordinator that advocates for him, and then finding, we had to work with the local, finding a placement for him, and then it was a lot of transitioning, even finances and paperwork. Uh, but for transitioning from school, I didn't have a day program set up for him. So, because he did not have services, I could have paid out of pocket, but I would have been able to pay maybe for a church day, and that would have been the extent of it because it's so expensive. Um, so we kind of struggled a bit. We didn't have an exact plan per se, but he had communicated it in the only way he knew how, which was through behavior, that he was finished with school. So we listened to that communication, and we chose not to continue his education. So
And
it was
that
a
was
matter
not
of fine. I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was just thinking for you I remember when you were in that time, and how extremely painful it was for you emotionally and psychologically to be okay and to figure it all out, um, and to accept that that was what was needed, and that was going
Yeah.
to be okay. Um, and so again, I encourage people, to think about. I've I'm just thinking about people who have made negative comments about when family members have gone into SILAs or group homes or
Mhm.
residential facilities or whatever. Parents don't just place them there lightly.
Yeah, the comments, so or especially even now with COVID, um, is, well, if you really loved them, you just take them home because it's been 200 and some gazillion days,
Hmm.
feeling like a million since we've hugged. So, but and when people hear that, they'll say, "Well, I would never place my loved one in. I would never." It's just like, listen to yourselves.
Yeah,
What you're telling the people that have had to do it is you really must not love your person.
right.
I had someone tell me the other day, it's you're his parent, so it's your choice if you choose not to hug him and to disappoint him. That's what they literally said. Uh, and I'm learning to realize that keyboard warriors really don't. It's not worth fighting them sometimes. If I
Hmm.
feel Sometimes I feel like I should educate them and let them know how their feelings, how what they communicated were communicating to me. But a lot of times, I just kind of don't. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to. I know we're probably. You said we were close, right?
Hmm.
So I just wanted to kind of summarize a little bit some of the C's.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Um,
we have about this much time left.
okay, here we go. Communication,
Hmm.
coordination, creativity,
Oh yeah.
caring, cues, consistency, and then of course we had the challenges, curveballs. Um, uh, I even have written down colors because a lot of time using
Oh
color
yeah.
something,
Hmm.
even color labels stuck
Hmm.
somewhere help with the transition. Go find that color.
Right. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Calendars. Um, But so that was just my summarization of brought to you by the letter C. But I just want to touch really fast because we didn't talk on it, but I think it's important. The unexpected transitions that happen is don't take the meltdowns personally. You have to go with the flow. The calmer you are, the more easily you're able to facilitate the transition and the meltdown.
Yep.
So I have to learn that. It is still a process. There are days I can just let everything screamed at me roll off my back and be very calm. And there's some days I cannot, and it pierces my heart and I take it personally. And that transition it doesn't happen a lot of times. Literally does not happen because I take it personally.
Yeah. And
so I just wanted to share that.
No,
very
don't
important.
apologize. Yeah, that is awesome. An awesome help, because that is so very important. If you think about the fact that you're frazzled and you understand that that's what's happening, think about the other person who may not understand it, or may not be able to verbalize it, or may not be able to rationally get through that situation at that moment. So if you then return irrational behavior because you're getting all frazzled and you're acting out and you're behaving in ways that you prefer that you didn't, then that just escalates the whole thing. But just exactly what you said, if you don't take it personally, because it really is not. The person doing the behavior, it's personal to them, but it's not personal at the person getting the behavior directed at them.
Because often you're that safe person, and so they're comfortable to even throw it at you.
Yes. And I know that it's, in some of those situations, it's much more difficult than in other situations. And we all are going to fail at it sometimes. We all are going to lose our cool occasionally, and we all are going to get upset in a situation. And you have to give yourself grace when that happens. But if you can maintain your calmness and your rational behavior more often than not, then you're going to move forward, and you're going to get through that transition time, and things will get better sooner rather than later. So
it's a
again,
growing process.
Yeah, it is. And as with any parenting, it's a learning process, but especially when you have someone that you are parenting with special needs, or that you love who has special needs, there's a whole different process involved, and everybody's learning and growing at all times. And if you're not, that's when you find a tougher spot to be in. So I just, yes. Wow. That's the first time I think Alex has learned something. She's always teaching us stuff. So Alex, thank you for that. Thanks, ladies, for another great session. Learned some things for myself today. Alex, I'm so glad, because like I said, normally you are there with giving us the sage advice, and we're learning from you. So it's fabulous that we were able to teach you something for yourself today. And I hope for anyone who is joining that we have been able to do that for you. Said I am an education consultant and a master IEP coach, and I am happy to help you with transitions with your child's IEP. If you need advice, or if you want to know some of the things that Fran has done for her children, I'm sure if you reached out to me, that she would be happy, responding to you. If there's something in here that you learned today that you wanted to learn more about, you can reach out to us through here. We both have access to this thread in the chat, so we can both see those things. So we hope we're always trying to encourage, and we're always trying to bring light to things that maybe some other people aren't bringing light to, because, it's just not something that people want to talk about. We haven't shied away from any topics yet. So thank you for joining us on Tuesday. Join me again for #NoLimits. Shay will be joining me. She was with me a couple months ago, but we didn't get all the way through her story. So she's going to join me again. And next Friday, Fran and I will be back again. Right now, we don't know what we're going to talk about, but as we've started saying, if there is something you want us to talk about or to discuss, please drop us a message and we will try our best to talk about it. I thank you all very much. We're almost seconds away. So have a great weekend and God bless everybody.